So, so this is a workshop. So can I ask everyone to come a little bit closer, just as a start. So we're nice and cozy. So there's water up here. I mean, I'm going to go through what I kind of was thinking of as a format for today in a minute. But if anyone is thirsty, just feel free to come to the front, and grab a glass, and
say something to the chat.
I'm going to get to that. Absolutely. Or stupid, for that matter. That's totally fine too. So will I start, or is it? Will I? There's still people dropping in. Let's give it a minute. I'll move on to the next slide so we have an idea what we could do in this time slot. And if people have different ideas, then it's a workshop, so we can change that, right? So they asked me, just as a introduction of the workshop, to start with a quick overview of where we are with cloud and OSGi in terms of specifications. And so I'm going to just briefly walk through that as a kind of a way to kind of get everybody's brains to the same page. And then I'm going to ask everyone in the room to write down on the notebooks and with the pens that Mike has so kindly provided. Thank you, Mike. Basically to write down some of your thoughts around cloud, OSGi, general OSGi thoughts or jokes, whatever you want to write down, really. But well, we need to work on the OSGi joke book. Yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, so basically there's going to be some, a session that everybody needs to write down something, and then hopefully we can use that as a starting point for a discussion, which I hope is going to be the latter part of the meeting. All right, and then we're finishing at 5:30. I think my opinion would be that it would be better not to leave the room when the rest of EclipseCon breaks, because that makes it really hard to, once you're in the middle of the discussion, to pick it up again. If you're thirsty, or there's water here or even outside, I think it's better if we kind of use the 2 hours together to get to some sort of a common understanding of things that can be done and can be improved. Oh. My remote control gave up. Interesting. Oh. Okay. Right. So, I guess, for those of you who don't know me, I'm involved in the OSGi Enterprise Expert Group. I'm one of the co-chairs there. Ray Auger is also co-host of this event, except that he's not here because he's doing another talk at this point in time, so he'll join us later on. But basically what we do in OSGi is we create specifications, and the main benefit there is that it's all about portability, right? So if you have multiple people who have kind of a similar idea, they might have a similar implementation, what you really like to have then is a specification so that users of that technology can move from one implementation to another. It gives them choice, portability. That's really what it's all about. So the OSGi specs are about a number of things, and cloud is only one of the topics in there, but there's other topics there too. And where we are right now is we're currently working on Enterprise R6. Enterprise R5 was released about 2 years ago. We're currently closing off on Enterprise R6. Q1 next year is probably the realistic date that it's going to be released. And then we're also already working on Enterprise R7, which is probably going to be 1.5 years from now or something like that. So many of the ideas that maybe we can talk about in this meeting will probably surface in that specification. Well, hopefully if we get agreement on it. Right. And then I'm also going to talk about a few other thoughts that are currently ongoing and where there's a lot of disagreement about. I think that's just a fun topic to see what people think about these things. It's really strange that this clicker doesn't work. Apparently Google requires me to press it. Okay, so what have we done in Enterprise R6? There's not a lot of specific cloud stuff in Enterprise R6. There's only a little bit, and that's the REST management API. It's a remote management API for OSGi. There's already one for JMX, but JMX isn't so great for in the cloud. People want to use REST when they're in the cloud. So we have a REST management API, and that's really an enabler if you want to do provisioning in the cloud of your framework. So that's new. And we also do some other new specs. Right, so we have the new HTTP whiteboard specification that has been mentioned already a few times today and yesterday. It makes it really easy to develop servlets with OSGi. And we have a new spec around asynchronous services and promises, which adds a really nice model to existing OSGi services. It basically allows you to use existing OSGi services in an asynchronous manner, but at the same time, it also allows you to write services specifically for this asynchronous programming model. So that's really nice. That is also using something new that is called promises, which is highly inspired by the JavaScript promises. It's an asynchronous programming model. Which is really easy to use, and it basically says, okay, fire this thing off asynchronously, and when it's done, do this thing, right? And if you use Java 8 lambdas, it becomes really nice and compact, but you can also use this with Java 5, right? In which case you use embedded classes or anonymous classes to specify the callback, but you can create a nice flow of steps that need to be executed asynchronously, and it's really easy to work with. Okay. In Enterprise R7, we expect to do a little bit more cloud stuff. One of the things that I've been working on for quite a while now is something called Cloud Ecosystems. It's basically about creating a PaaS layer for OSGi that basically spans multiple IaaS layers. But it's not simply, many PaaS layers that are there today for deployment of your application are simple duplications of your deployment. You can deploy a WAR file and you can just say, okay, I want to have 5 instances or something like that. Now this is much more fine-grained. The idea is that you have a composite application that is spread out over the cloud, and that is composed of many different components which all have potentially different scaling requirements, and you can control it really precisely. So, this is just a sample picture, but the idea is that these nodes and their services in there, they can float across your various IaaS layers, so you have like a fluid system of nodes in the cloud, and it's all OSGi bundles that are running in the cloud, and the way you deal with these nodes is through OSGi services. So it's really, really easy if you use OSGi services already. You might be using Blueprint or declarative services or something else. You can just continue using that to deal with your services in the cloud. So that's what we're doing in RFC 183. The good news is that there's a lot of people who have implemented something like this, and they all came to the same kind of architecture. I think Tim, who presented just earlier on his Iolus, sorry if that's not the right pronunciation, project has a similar concept. There are people in Eclipse, forgot the name of the project, who have done something like this. So it's an excellent candidate for standardization because the same idea service. So this is probably going to be in Enterprise R7. But there's also other things that we're talking about. We've recently started an RFC around distributed eventing. OSGi already has event admin, which is basically a local service, and it's basically really written for local use. There have been people who created remote versions of it, but it didn't really work that well. There's some limitations at least. So basically, distributed eventing is about, like a message bus basically for OSGi. And the idea is that it's really simple to use, and it really fits in with the other specifications such as remote services, the existing event admin, and asynchronous services. So that's kind of something that has just been started, but just to let you know that it's in the pipeline. So this is kind of the slide where I kind of some random ideas, and specifically around multi-tenancy. What do we do in OSGi for multi-tenancy? Do we need to do something at all? I mean, you can do multi-tenancy on many different layers. You can run separate virtual machines on a box. You can run separate processes, or you can run separate Docker instances, or you could use a special multi-tenant JVM, which are, Oracle and IBM are creating, or you could do it in the JVM itself. And what the right level for you is personally, I think it depends on the application. I mean, the higher you go, the more expensive, right? Because if you do it on the OS level, you waste a lot of resources just running another OS just to run another tenant. That's quite expensive. Kind of the lower you go here, the higher your density or your resource reuse. But I mean, the level of isolation is obviously higher here than it is down here. I mean, if you're within the same JVM, things are a lot closer together. So yeah, again, I think it depends on your use case where you do the multi-tenancy. I would be very interested in hearing what the people in the room think about this topic. But one of the ideas at the moment is to maybe enhance subsystems a little bit to make it support multi-tenancy within the JVM for certain use cases. So that's just one random thought. Okay, so yeah, that was my quick introduction. It was really quick, actually, only 10 minutes or so. Yeah, so I think this workshop is about learning what your issues are in the cloud. Can OSGi help? Are there any improvements needed? And okay, before we get into that, I just wanted to say, get involved. OSGi is an open organization. If you want to get involved in the specification process, you can see all the documents. RFPs are requirements documents. RFCs are design documents that turn into specs. You can see them all on GitHub, and you can provide feedback via Bugzilla, for example. So you can see what everybody there is doing, or you can even become more intimately involved with OSGi, become a member, and you can drive specs. You can write your proposals directly and discuss them in the expert groups. So that's, if you're interested, OSGi is always open for new members, and yeah, come talk to me or anyone else, any other member on how to do that. Or you can just go there and see how it works. Okay, so I was going to suggest that everybody takes a sheet of paper and a pen. I didn't open the pens yet, but take a sheet of paper, write down, if you want, your name and email, because then I can, share the notes from this meeting and email everybody back. And basically write down 2 or 3 things or more. The first one is, how are you using OSGi today? And the second one would be, what would you like to see addressed for the cloud in OSGi? Is there anything that we can add or do? And then the optional third one is any other thoughts that you might have. And that's really the end of the presentation side of it.